Hi, my name's Tara, and today's PowerPoint is on early geometry experiences, particularly exploring, identifying, and describing the attributes of simple 2D shapes. So Jack is my nephew. He is 4 years old, and he is the youngest of 3 siblings. Jack attends a kindergarten, and he's very energetic, very outgoing, very hands-on, loves running around. So I plan these activities around his personality. So the purpose of these experiences was to see if Jack could identify and describe the attributes of 2D shapes and 3D shapes in the environment by number, name, and number of sides and corners. So the last time Jack and I played together, I recognised that he had an understanding of the shapes, names, but had difficulty describing the features, the attributes of what made a shape a shape. So I decided to plan some activities that exposed Jack to different shapes and gave him opportunities to have language modelled to him and for him to try and practice the language to describe the attributes of shapes with a focus on the sides and the corners. I used modelling, speculating, open-ended questions, and explanation to help Jack become a more effective communicator and a more confident and involved learner. So my activities were based on the EYLF. Jack is only 4 years old and is not in permanent school at the moment, so I felt like these were the most appropriate. So outcome 4, children are confident and involved learners, and outcome 5, children are effective communicators. So the first learning experience was shape jumping. The aim of the game was to so Jack I played music, and Jack jumped from shape to shape, and I told him that the floor was lava, so he couldn't touch anywhere other than the shapes. So the challenge was to jump from shape to shape without touching the rest of the floor, and then when the music was to stop, I got him to then look at the shape he was standing on, tell me the name of the shape, and then describe or try and describe the attributes of that shape. So I played the music, and Jack ran around and jumped to shape to shape, and then I stopped. And when I stopped, he had actually landed on a rectangle. So he used his strategy of using his fingers to count the corners and the sides. And I wanted Jack to revisit the concept from before, from our first experience where we were comparing a rectangle and a square. So I had little prompting cards, and he was standing on top of the rectangle, and I asked him to tell me if he noticed that there was anything different between the square and the rectangle. Jack looked at the rectangle and he counted the corners, and he counted the sides, and he said there's 4 sides and 4 corners. I asked him to then count the amount of sides on the square, and he said that they were the same. But then I said, Jack, if you look at the square and the rectangle, do they look different, or do they look the same? And he looked at the shape, he looked at both of them, and he said, no, they're not the same. And I said, so why do you think they're not the same? Jack traced around the rectangle with his finger, and I traced around the square with my finger, and I got him to count the amount of sides again. And I asked him again, I said, Jack, do you think that these shapes are the same? And he said no again, and I said, why not? And he said, this one's bigger, and he pointed to the rectangle. So he was actually explaining to me that the one side of the side was actually longer than the other sides, and that's how he explained it to me. So for the next activity, I wanted to continue exposing and developing Jack's understanding of processes to do with attributes of shapes by developing an ability to mirror, repeat, and practice the action of drawing a shape. So the second learning activity experience was a natural flow on from the first. I was actually planning on conducting this experience, but I recognised an authentic moment for learning where I could gain a better understanding of Jack's ability to pay attention to the attributes of shapes as he drew, and just kind of followed on from that. So after playing the lava game, where the shapes are drawn already onto the driveway, I noticed that Jack had found the chalk, and he had started tracing around the edges of the shape with the chalk just on his own. I took advantage of this opportunity and basically led him into talking about what he was doing and counting out the amounts of sides and corners of the shapes. I said, Jack, what are you drawing? Can you tell me the name of this shape? He looked at it and he said, it's round. And I said, yes, it's round. I said, I wonder if there's anything else we can see that's round. I encouraged Jack to look around his surroundings and to try and find something round. Jack saw the tyres on his bike and pointed them out to me. Yes, good job. I wonder how we can figure out if they are the same shape. Do you think that the tyre is the same shape as this shape? I pointed to the circle on the floor. And Jack nodded. I said, I wonder how we can tell. So I reminded that Jack is a circle that just keeps going round. And I said, we can tell it's a circle because it has no corners. And so I use my finger to show him, and it just keeps going round and round. So I set the bike on its side and physically demonstrated how the tyre keeps going round, and Jack actually loved making the tyres moving and going faster. So I tried again. I said, I wonder what other shape goes round and round like a tyre. To prompt him, I pointed to the circle, and straight away Jack made the connection and he said, yes, circle. So we moved back to drawing and I asked him, Jack, can you show me how to draw a circle? And then he actually traced over the top of the other circle. To make the activity a bit more challenging, I asked Jack, I wonder if you can draw a smaller circle inside the bigger circle without going outside the edges. I wanted to see if he could transfer and adapt what he had learned. If I was to do this activity again, I would have encouraged him to draw like the shape next to instead of on top of. So the learning intention for the next activity was for Jack to begin to categorise, sort collections and events and attributes of objects and materials in his natural. So the third activity was a shape hunt. I wanted to see if he could transfer his understanding of 2D shapes from the previous experience to 3D shapes in his environment. The shapes I wanted to mainly focus on finding in the environment were squares, rectangles, and circles. I explained to Jack that we were going to go on a scavenger hunt and for shapes, and that he needed to use his camera to take photos. I made the activity a little bit more fun for him because I gave him a little Polaroid camera so that he could just have the photos like there and then, which he absolutely loved. So the aim of the game was to hunt for shapes in the environment using this worksheet here that I had pre-planned. So I just drew some shapes on there just to give him a bit of reference. So I encouraged Jack to start walking around the garden and the house and, opening his eyes up and looking for shapes. So I said, wow, I can see so many shapes, Jack. I asked Jack to look at the first shape on the reference sheet, and it was a circle. And I put that first because it was probably the easiest shape for him to identify and describe, or a name. So I asked him, Jack, what is it? And he said, it's a circle. And as I said circle, I used my arm to kind of make a circle in the air, and I encouraged Jack to do the same thing. I said, now we're going to go find the same shape somewhere around the garden. I said to Jack, I wonder if Dad's car has anything on it that's a circle. I said, remember, a circle has no corners and it's completely round. Jack ran into the shed and started looking all over the car and found a tyre. He said, it's round. And I said, yes, good job. I said, can you tell me what shape the tyre is? And he said, it's a circle. I said, can you tell me why it's a circle? And I retraced the tire with my finger. He wasn't entirely sure what to say, so I reminded him it's a circle because it has no corners. And Jack took a photo of the tire. So the last shape is a little bit more trickier. So we're going to try and find something that looks like a rectangle. I said, do you remember what a rectangle looks like? I showed him the shapes reference list and I said it's a little bit like a square, remember? But one side is longer than the other. The square has the same side, same length sides, and a rectangle has sides that are longer, like it's been stretched out. So I used my finger to trace the shape of the rectangle, and I got Jack to copy me in doing the same thing. And I said, do you think that we could find something around the house that's shaped like a rectangle? As Jack was running around, I could see he was struggling to make the connection between the 2D shape of a rectangle and one in the environment. So I prompted him. I said, Jack, do you remember why a rectangle is different to a square? And he said, it's bigger. I said, almost. I said, a rectangle has 4 sides like a square, but remember a rectangle has 4 sides, that a square has 4 sides that are exactly the same, but a rectangle has 2 sides that are longer and 2 sides that are shorter. And so as we kept looking, I looked at Jack again. I said, hey, that door looks interesting, Jack. And I said, do you think that door has 2 sides that are longer than the others? We both counted the sides of the doors and he counted that there was 4. And I said, Jack, do you think that this is longer than this? And he said, yes, it is longer. And I said, do you know what shape it is? You know what it's called? And he said, it's a rectangle. And so that was really good. I saw that progression of learning from that activity previously. So basically at the end of the activity, I got all of the Polaroids and I went and put all little names on them and then gave them to Jack as a little souvenir. So all in all, the range of maths that Jack explored during that day was really impressive. However, upon reflecting on this experience, I realised that play does not guarantee mathematical development. I saw that the importance of being intentional through questions that provoke, clarify, extend, and develop his understandings. I learned a lot through this experience, but I think the main thing that I learned was that when teaching a particular mathematical concept through play, it is really important to be flexible and to be responsive in your approach because children do have their own agenda, and I realised how actually important it was to adapt. So yeah, I think it's important that children are exposed to the language of shape really early. I think it's only beneficial for them. Parents can, encourage children to build strong foundations in early childhood mathematics through thoughtful and intentional home experiences. And with a little creativity, like simple household items can become powerful tools for learning maths. So yeah, it was a really amazing opportunity to use the home, to use the experiences through play to be able to teach him and expose him to the languages of geometry and kind of getting to think about things for himself and look at things in a critical way and being able to communicate that. He's still quite young, so the ability for him to actually communicate his words in a clear and concise way is not quite there yet, but he definitely was exposed, and over the 3 lessons he really he started understanding more about the concept of a rectangle and a square and the differences, and by the end of the 3rd activity he was really able to name the shapes pretty much straight away when I showed him. So he wasn't able to do that when I did the very first learning experiences a couple of weeks ago. But so yeah, I think he really benefited from this. I learned a lot from this experience, and I hope that you enjoyed and understood my PowerPoint. Thank you.